from the subreddit Off My Chest. My ex-husband just guilted me for months about wanting half of our child's ashes. So I finally gave him an urn full of tomato fertilizer.
You're a cunt.
I don't know if this makes me a terrible person or
Yes.
just a person who finally broke, but I need to get this off my chest. This is long, but the context matters. I was married for 9 years. For most of that time, I was the one earning degrees, building a career, keeping us afloat financially, emotionally, and practically. He worked a commission job when he felt like it and communicated mostly through threats. Threats to my job, threats to my family relationships, threats to ruin me financially if I ever tried to leave. I stayed far too long because abuse is easier to recognize in hindsight than when you're living inside it. We eventually had a child, not because our marriage was strong, but because at the exact moment I said, I think we should separate, he suddenly decided he wanted a baby after all. Our child was the best thing that ever happened to me. He was present for the fun parts and little else. Everything was always, if you're already doing it, why should I have to? Sick kid on Christmas, he dropped us at the ER and went home. Night feedings, you're the light sleeper. Childcare, you're better at it. I finally moved out. We tried shared custody, but he treated solo parenting like punishment. I'd pick up our kid from daycare and find them still in the pajamas I sent them in, hair unbrushed, shoes mismatched. Meanwhile, he was telling my parents and our friends that I never wanted to fix the marriage. And then everything in my life imploded. Our child had routine elective surgery, the surgeon made a catastrophic error, and after several days in the ICU, our child died. I genuinely can't describe that part, there aren't words. But even in the middle of that nightmare, decisions had to be made, including what to do with the ashes. Both agreed they should not be separated, he insisted on that point. So the day comes to pick them up from the morgue. He's supposed to meet me. He never answers the phone, never responds to texts. I later learn he was partying in the backyard with his family the night before and was likely hungover. So I went alone, sat in a quiet room while a kind woman handed me my child's ashes and a discounted invoice. I paid with my credit card and walked out carrying a box no parent should ever have to carry. A month later, he was skiing with his girlfriend and posting photos of them drinking on social media while I was still on FMLA, barely able to shower. We divorced shortly after. He took everything from our marital home, even items from before I met him. My childhood photos, ornaments from trips, my first bedroom set. I didn't fight. I was empty. And now we get to the reason I'm writing this. 7 months after our child's death, his mother started guilt-tripping him about not having his half of the ashes. Suddenly he was harassing me non-stop, calling, texting, telling people I was withholding them. Legally, the ashes were mine. The paperwork and his messages proved he refused separation at the time. But we're in the middle of an intense malpractice case. My lawyers begged me to keep him calm because he had already threatened to mess with the case out of spite. Then his girlfriend showed up at my house with a cheap Amazon urn and basically wordlessly dropped it into my hands. I stared at that urn for days. I knew I could not go back to the morgue. I could not relive that experience again. I could barely breathe at the thought of walking into that building. So I did the only thing my traumatized, exhausted, cornered brain could come up with. I Googled what human ashes look like. I Googled what type of bag they come in, and then I Googled what looks exactly like human ashes. Turns out, tomato fertilizer. I ordered the same kind of bag used for cremains, ordered the fertilizer, and 2 days later I stood in my kitchen funneling tomato fertilizer into the bag, placing it into the cheap urn, supergluing the lid shut, and delivering it to his doorstep. He never said thank you. He never questioned it. He only texted to call me an asshole for taking this long to be reasonable. My ex-husband now proudly owns an urn full of Miracle Grow because he weaponized grief one time too many. I'm not proud of it. Not sure I regret it either. I'm just finally breathing again after sharing it.
Okay, so a couple of things.
Do you retract your prior statement?
Look, you can be a cunt because of trauma. Like, yes, this guy deserves somebody being a cunt to him. Still, I partially retract it. But also, and I've got a couple of things. First up, fertilizer is not the closest thing you're going to get to ashes. Ashes are. Get something. If you absolutely burn the shit out of animal, it will come out looking more like crematorium than a. You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
I'm wondering if you've ever actually physically seen cremains.
Yes. Also, cremains aren't just your person. Like most places, there are still going to be bits and pieces from other people in them anyway. It's a bullshit farce for the most part. But also, most of them end up with little bits in them. if you're going to replace a kid, if you're going to put something into a bag and say it's cremains, make sure you put little bits of bone chips in there. Like, get a KFC, like, break it up, put it through. You'll be fine. Just makes it more believable. But yeah, that guy is a fuckwit and deserves to be the tomato fertilizer.
Honestly, these kind of people just don't make sense to me. Like, if you're going to be someone who doesn't give a fuck about your kid, like, do it with your whole chest and just let your family think you're the cunt you are. Like, why put people through this unnecessarily? Like, you can just say the same thing to them and be like, fuck you, I'm gonna do what I want.
I'm not going to comment because we have lived through somebody being like that until his...
Yeah, and that shit doesn't make fucking sense either.
Sure it does. People want the validation from external more than they want the validation for the people in their life when they're not happy with their marriage. And it sucks. It is him being a petty douchebag. But it is extraordinarily common. And it's because they don't care about the person they're with anymore. Which, get a fucking divorce. Like, before any of this happens, get a fucking divorce. You don't care about that person. After it happens, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, that's not really possible once there's a kid involved.
Yes, but at this point, there was no longer a kid involved. As sucky it is to say, they do not have to have anything to do with that person anymore.
Yeah, but in this specific case, why she was having to at least come up with some way to play ball was because of the malpractice case. And we don't know what tomato fertilizer looks like wherever this person is. If it is an American kind of tomato fertilizer, then it could very much look like cremains. We also don't know what cremated Americans look like. Could look very different to our cremains here because of what their makeup is.